um, for posterity, and I'm going to make the baby stop crying with my magic skill. Willa is 8 weeks, so 2 months old tomorrow. And what's so interesting about her story is we were talking to our postpartum midwife, and the way she came into the world is about 1% of all births in our country. So I didn't think, you think, oh, we might be special, we might not be, I don't know. But what made it special is she is a vaginal breech birth. So she was born booty first. And in the United States, I would say, I don't know the actual percentage, but like 99% are scheduled C-sections. Like it's required, you don't even get the option. So I feel I don't want to say lucky. So when I found out I was pregnant, I really wanted to go with a midwife, but I had just started working on a full run of a TV show. So I was like, I don't have time to meet anybody. So I just stayed with my current doctor. And I read one of the first books I read was called Birth Without Fear by January Harsh. And it is a magical book. And I think it actually speaks more just about women in general, as opposed to just pregnancy. It really, and postpartum health, it really has to do with just like female narratives and really sticking to your guns, and really for any of our medical needs for women, a lot of our studies are actually done on men medical wise, which is bananas. And so I learned a whole lot through this book. And one of the first things I learned through that book and another book called Spiritual Midwifery, because I knew I had to go the very traditional medical route, just because I didn't have time to go meet the crunchy people I wanted to meet. And one of the first things I learned about was about breech babies, and that there are tons of safe ways for them to be born. And not every woman who had a breech baby died in childbirth. And so I happened to do a lot of research on that. So one of my very first, and in these books, they have checklist items of things you need to talk to your doctor as soon as possible. And one of the things I asked was, oh, thanks, Amy. One of the first things I asked was, what is your position on breech babies? And I learned that in the hospital setting that I was a part of, it was a scheduled C-section. But my doctor, who I'd known for about 5 years, he was like, but there's a couple guys in town that do deliver them, and I would just send you to them. And I was like, great. But he's like, it's super rare. You're fit, you're healthy. A lot of our tests came back negative, so we were super duper low risk. So he was like, that's not going to happen. So, so the reason that I feel like I really wanted to share any sort of story and whatnot is because the reason I had success is because I started standing up for myself right in the beginning. So I asked that question and I was like, okay, cool. And I switched to my chiropractors, and my chiropractor she's still our chiropractor. She adjusts Willa still. It is specialized in the Webster technique. And one of her requirements, it's not an actual requirement, but it's something that she really pushes, is by 28 weeks, 30 at the most, she's like, I need to know where that baby is, and head up, head down, whatever. And so I had to really push for it. At every single doctor's appointment, I had to be like, I need to see her. I need to see where she is. My chiropractor says it's super important. And it turns out it was. She was still booty first, and she was smaller, so they weren't worried about it. But I told my chiropractor, and so she started, they have breech protocols, so we went on breech protocol. I went and saw someone who does Maya abdominal massage, which for any person with a uterus, I highly recommend. It's a bizarre massage, but it feels so good. And it just focuses on all of your everything, like from shoulders to hips. And it's a specialized massage for like round ligaments and our backs and our pelvis. It's so fascinating. It's so good. So I had this whole team of people and my doulas with spinning babies techniques. We tried to do everything to flip her, and we couldn't do it. And they say babies with neurological issues don't flip. Nope, she's totally fine. Nothing that we can see now. There was just no reason. They did later on try to scare us that there's something called IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction. And they were like, your baby's too small. They threatened, that was on a Monday, and they were like, we're going to cut you open on Friday. And I was like, y'all need to chill out. Everyone's got to chill out. So that was like really early on. And I think that's for me, an important thing to share, because when I was going through all of this, I couldn't find any positive stories. I could only find other people who had been just scared out of this whole experience. I know IUGR babies do fine. And then they said that our fluid was too low. And I was like, I drink over 100 ounces of water a day. And like, what are you talking about? So all of our tests came back fine. About 32 weeks, I tried to transfer to the doctor who specializes in breech birth, but they were too busy to fit me in. And long story short, because I mean, every little detail is a little annoying, but when we found out at 36 weeks that she was for sure, she was booty down. She played with her toes. And I always knew she was playing with her toes, and people wouldn't believe me. They're like, no, she's head down. I was like, no, she is not. I can feel hands and feet all the time. So at my 36 weeks, they did another scan to see where she was. She was definitely breech. I was also GBS positive. By the way, they make such a big deal about group B strep, which we all have some form of group B strep, and sometimes it's active or inactive. They make the biggest deal out of it, and y'all, it's just not. It's so annoying. So anyway, I found both of those out on the same day, and my doctor, because I was like, you're not scheduling me for an automatic C-section. I feel like that's really unfair, and I feel like I need a fighting chance. So he called, his name is Dr. Joseph Tate, and he's one of the few people in the Atlanta area. There's 2 or 3 that will just do these kinds of births. And he agreed to take us. And we get there, we have like an hour-long meeting with him, and he kept telling me, you're going to have to push this baby out. And I was like, like, I don't know how else, other than, and unless you open me up, I don't know how else they come out. He kept saying that. And I guess there's just this old overriding misunderstanding, whether it's from, I don't know if it's in the medical community or what, but, or other women just not being very educated in the whole process. I don't know. But I kept hearing that, and I kept being like, I don't know what this is supposed to mean or coach me through. I'm really confused. So in that meeting, we found out that in order for me to be a candidate to push her out, her booty and head had to be a 1 to 1.1 ratio. So her booty needed to be about the same size. Agreed, Clip. She said, it's pretty ridiculous that birth rules are made by men. Yep. Yep. So we had to get a scan done, and her booty had to be the same size or ever so slightly larger, yes, than her head. And we went and we passed that test. And I don't know why they were trying to, I don't know why they were trying to scare me. I think I think in a way, this is mainly probably for legal reasons. I think they were trying to scare me because they were concerned if something went wrong, I would sue them. I don't, or I'm assuming because that's what most doctors operate under, is just some sort of fear and fear mongering. So that's my best guess. And yes, tremendous pushing, which apparently it is harder to push them out booty first, but I can't compare it. Why are you crying again? You can fall asleep. You can talk to everybody. They can listen. It's fine. Yeah. Okay. So we got cleared to do everything, and I can't imagine. One of the things that kept coming up too was my BMI. So if I had been overweight at all, they probably wouldn't have listened to me, which is, we all know, a bunch of bullshit. But we know that. I was negative for gestational diabetes. So I'm sure if that had been a thing, they would have. Yeah. So Colette just said, the theory is that once the largest part of the baby passes through the cervix, it will start to contract. So if the head is bigger, but later it can get stuck and the baby can become hypoxic. 100%. But I also read a lot of studies through evidence-based birth and some other people that they were like, it doesn't just go, it doesn't do that. And my experience pushing her out is they didn't give it time to do that. It was one of the most hands-on experiences I've ever had. Yeah, and it is the reason they don't want to take the risk. And it can happen, 100%. I will say that the doctor that we had that was a specialist in this kind of birth, he was like, we had to agree to forceps. He was like, I've used forceps twice in 40 years. And that's if the baby's head gets stuck. So we said yes to that. And the episiotomies is where they cut you as opposed to naturally tearing. He's like, I've done that. I think he did that twice in 40 years as well. And the same reason, just to provide more space. Yes, that is the reason. But there's been they did the study. I read the big study that they use about why they really push C-sections. And it was only done on like 100 cases, and they only did it in the 90s or something like that. Like the research hasn't continued. And they also, yes. So it's not a good reason, but it's less risky to just do the C-section. 100%. But for me, deep in my soul, I knew it wasn't the right choice. And the wacky part of this story, not that it wasn't already wacky, is deep in my gut, I was like, surgery doesn't feel right. I just don't feel like I'm the right person. Yeah, insurance does run it. And C-sections, they push them too because they do make more money for the hospital. And I didn't feel it was the right answer. And turns out it was a good thing. So she was born April 4th, and we all went into lockdown, like 13th. Yeah, that sounds right. So right before then. And so when she was born, it was the beginning where we didn't know anything, absolutely anything. So it was chaos. And so our last prenatal appointments were alone. Jordan couldn't come. We didn't know if he was going to be able to come to the hospital. I was working with my doulas on how we were going to communicate like this. Like I'm looking at all of your faces as I talk, but we had to practice talking to the camera and taking turns, like what it was like when she would know I wasn't looking at her, I was looking actually into her eyes. And when I needed to talk to her, I had to change it. We were practicing that we could really and truly connect. So that was really bizarre to have to do that. And at the time they were not doing any COVID tests. They were not taking, maybe they took a temperature, but they didn't do any of that because they didn't know what that would prove or not prove at that time. So we get there. The night I went into labor, it was like, I don't know, 9:30 at night, and it went immediately. My contractions were 2 to 4 minutes apart, immediately. And I got no breaks. So I was thinking, okay, well, I need to try to see if I can slow them down and relax at home. But we called our doctor, and he was like, nope, that sounds too risky. You need to come in now, which I really didn't want to. So I stalled for a couple of hours, and we made it. We live 30 minutes from downtown Atlanta. So we just took our time. It was the middle of the night too. So we went in. I was 4 centimeters dilated. So they admitted me. And I thought, oh, maybe this will go quickly. I've never been more wrong in my life. So from there, I was 4 centimeters dilated. I was 80% effaced. So I thought I would go quickly. But one thing is, because she wasn't head down and pushing on my cervix, there was no extra tension to help things move along. It was just the contractions themselves, and her position wasn't good enough. So I labored. Yeah. So I labored at the hospital. I went into the bathtub for a little while, but they didn't have birthing tubs. They just had bathtubs. So like I had to lay completely on my side to even like half of my body be submerged. It was super awkward, but that I labored with no help for about 20 hours. And I stalled at 8 I was at 6 centimeters for a long time. And then I got to 7 and got to that like transition feeling. And I was in transition for 5 hours. So I would say I was probably 30 minutes, and I got stuck at 8 centimeters. I went ahead and got an epidural, and my nurses really encouraged me to do that because they knew a lot more than I did. And in the sense that I needed to relax, I needed to chill out. This was not going to go quickly because she wasn't engaging perfectly. She was, but it wasn't very quickly. And they were like, you're in this for a lot more time. And it turned out I had another 8-9 hours left. So they were just like, you need to be able to rest and let your body do the thing. And I'm really grateful I did, because it was another 8 or 9 hours before I was ready. So I had it really light. I actually could move my legs the whole time. I couldn't walk, but I could feel my legs the whole time. Anytime they needed to, like they turned me to like a pancake, like on your side to side, and I could help them do that. No, I didn't have any meconium. Everything was clear. They did break my water. They did everything to try to speed this along. And the one thing that they always say is, for breech babies, don't touch them. Don't do anything. Don't touch them. So as interventions started to pile up, I did start to get a little worried that they would go the C-section train because of Intervention City. So I got a little nervous, but her heart rate didn't drop in 28 hours that I was in labor. She stayed perfectly fine the entire time. So I think I got really lucky in that case, because that tends to be what they say is the biggest emergency, right? Of course, their heart rates drop for many reasons, but hers stayed really, really steady. So I'm very grateful that is one of the risks that wasn't there. And everything was clear. Our doctor did say, when breech babies come out, though, they're like a poop tube of toothpaste, because they're being squeezed the opposite direction. So he's just like, they become a poop tube, which I thought was funny and is very true. So they become a tube. Sorry, this is being recorded. So I was at 9 centimeters, and I was kind of stuck there, and they were like, you're probably, once you start pushing, we'll go to 10. It's like, okay, let's do this. And I was waiting. And at this point, I realized I hadn't seen my doctor in about 5 or 6 hours. And I was like, I don't know why I've not seen him. You know, you get really busy with the whole experience that you don't realize that you've not seen this person. And our nurse, the stories are true in that what I've read in my experience, you get the nurse you need for every stage that you're in. Like our first nurse, she was very lighthearted. I was able to throw a couple jokes in. And by the way, my contractions were 2 to 4 minutes for 28 hours. They never stopped. So that's the other reason why I'm really grateful for the epidural, because I never had that moment where I was like, oh, you have you have more than a 2 to 5 minute break. But the first one, she was super nice. The second nurse we had was business. And she's the one who really looked me dead in my eyeballs and was like, you need this epidural because I want you to succeed. I really want you to succeed. And I need you to do this. I need you to trust me. And then the next nurse, I literally got the epidural as the anesthesiologist was leaving and to go into another C-section. Oh, and that's another thing too about early COVID. They were canceling scheduled C-sections. If it was not deemed like absolutely necessary, they were canceling them and pushing them. For what we know now was like nobody just knew what the crap was going on. So I'm also grateful that that wasn't part of our story, because I have a feeling that would be really awfully stressful. And I'm really grateful that wasn't part of it, because it was stressful enough. Going into the hospital, I already knew, like I had a mask, but outside the hospital, they already had mobile units out and tents, and no visitors were technically allowed. So I had to keep being like, my husband is parking the car. My husband is parking the car. Please let him in. And so he had to go through so much security, and he had to keep being like, I'm not going to the normal part of the hospital. I'm allowed in here. So he had to really fight to get to the labor and delivery unit, which that was really stressful. And I had my doula on the phone with me the whole time. So she was being able to advocate and talk to me and help me talk to nurses the entire time. And it got to be comical. We went through 3 nurses, and 3 doctors, which is the next part of the story, that we kept. At one point, the anesthesiologist was like, you can't have your phone on. And I was like, yes, I can. It's my doula. And she just looked at me and I was like, yeah, we can't have our teams here. So I get to keep my phone on. My phone is on the whole time. And that's something that hospitals, you can't have during certain procedures. Like all of our ultrasounds, we couldn't have our phones on. All of that was just so dumb. But anyway, so our final nurse, the first thing that she told me is, because getting an epidural felt like a massive failure to me. 5G could hurt the baby. I know. Yeah, it's how COVID gets spread. The first thing our final nurse said to me was, you're not basically, you got all this way. I got to 8.5, 9 centimeters all by myself. You just needed a little bit of help. And that's the first thing she told me. And it gave me such peace in that moment, because I did feel like a failure for what I was truly hoping. And because of this waterfall of interventions, I didn't want that to be the excuse. I wanted true medical reasons to be the excuse we had a C-section, not, oh, well, you got an epidural. And so that gave me a lot of peace. And she was so encouraging and wonderful, and was the person we needed for the last stretch. So she is the one who came in. This is when I realized I hadn't seen my doctor in several hours. And she came in, and she looked like she had seen a ghost, and looked at me, and I knew really, really bad news was coming my way. She had that look of, this is really bad news. And it was my doctor. And I got on the phone with him, and he said, Jessica, I cannot come back to the hospital. I have tested positive for COVID-19 and I cannot come back. He said, I am well. I have no symptoms, but I was concerned being in contact with so many patients, and the hospital at that time, I can't speak for now, but the hospital at the time refused to test any doctors. So he said, in my good conscience, I got myself tested. I paid for my test. I tested positive. I cannot come catch your baby. And I was, for obvious 10,000 reasons, my heart sank. And he said, the attending doctor does not feel comfortable delivering your baby Breech. And I was like, so what do we do? And he goes, I am calling all of my colleagues in the city. And by this point, y'all, it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night on Friday. It had been, I say about 20, that makes sense, about 24 hours since I went into labor. Yeah, about that. That makes sense. I'm trying to find any doctor to come help you. And I'm at 9 centimeters and don't know who's going to be there. We got my doula on the phone. We told her the situation. I was told I handled it okay. I was openly wweeping because I just felt like all of my options were just swept under the rug. I felt like I wasn't even going to get the chance to try, especially having fought to even be in that position to begin with. And especially with COVID going around, I didn't want to be in the hospital longer than I had to be, because I really didn't, no one especially, and we still don't know a lot, but we really didn't know. To me, I thought that it was just this disease that lingered in the air, and just by existing, you could get it, because we just didn't know. And I didn't want to be cut open and be sitting in a hospital, not able to go home, where we knew that was like the one place we knew was safe. And my nurse was super wonderful. My doulas also had a really good point at that time. They were like, Jess, I know that you want this, but if you don't want any doctor to say yes, because they don't train in it, they don't practice it, and that could be more dangerous if you've got someone who just doesn't know what they're doing. And my doctor called me back. He goes, his name's Dr. Weiss, is going to come in and he's going to see if he could help you. And I was like, okay. And I kind of know what that means now, but I really didn't then. And my doulas, who are angels, and why I think they're such amazing advocates, is, they called other doulas and other doctors they had relationships with to vet this guy before he even got to the hospital, which was really cool. And one of the doctors they had a relationship with said, yes, Dr. Weiss is legit. He's super old school, so he's actually been trained in this. She's going to be fine. So I get there, and he walks into my room, and he's in a mask, face shield. I saw just his eyeballs. I kind of know what he looks like now, but not really. And he walks in, and he doesn't introduce himself. He just walks in, and the nurse tells him what's going on. And there was also a resident, and let me backpedal a little bit. My nurse and the resident, so someone who's doing their last 6 years of training, they wanted me to have this so badly, because they were like, we won't get to do this for a long time. We want you to succeed because we're going to succeed, because we get to help you. And, the nurse, when I went in the night before, we were like, oh, it's Tate's Breech baby. Like, it was this whole, we were like hospital celebrities, which was super weird. And she was like, no, I want you to have this. And so I feel very lucky for that, because when the doctor came in, they both were like, I think they gave all the reasons of why he should say yes. So just like an actor, I had to audition. So this is weird. So I get there, he gets there, he doesn't introduce himself. I do have the resident and my nurse with me. So that really gave me a lot of confidence. And he basically is like, push. And I was like, huh? What? And luckily my doula, she was coaching me on the phone because he didn't. And I pushed and he goes, great, let's do it. And I was like, huh? What? Okay, sure. So it turns out I was stuck at like 9.5, almost 10 centimeters, but anytime I pushed, I went to 10 and I stayed there. And she kept moving down. So, and to the best of my knowledge, I did 4 pushes and I got the job, y'all. It was like auditioning for a freaking role. Whatever I did, whatever magic I had, worked, and I was allowed to do the thing. So at this hospital, any specialty birth, so whether it is a C-section, whether it's breech, no matter what, you have to do it in the OR. So they wheeled me to the operating room. It sucks in there. For every C-section mom, the amount of bravery it takes to be in there, it is white and void. I've never been awake in an OR, and being awake in one is really, really intimidating. It's just really intimidating, and they are really cold. They are really, really cold. Makes sense, but it sucks when you're awake. And we rolled in. Jordan he was dolled up like a C-section. And I think the thing is really and truly, if it's an emergency, then everybody's ready to go. So, but I didn't have to be on the operating table. I got to stay on my bed, which was at least one nice thing. The other thing that we're being told while I am pushing, so I started pushing, and I pushed her for an hour, which I feel very proud of myself for. I know, Pumpkin. I know. No, we'll play in a minute. One thing it never registered because they're talking at me, and it was never super duper clear. They were like, oh, NICU is here, just in case. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fair. Breech babies come out stunned. Like, they don't come out kicking and screaming because they're like, oh, I'm here. So they come out stunned because their head is the last thing to come out. What I didn't realize is they had put us under, what do you call it? Infectious disease protocol. So they started treating us like we had COVID. There's definitely no testing, of course, at this point. There's no reason for them to be able to know if we do or do not, but they treated us like we were under infectious disease. So I pushed the baby out. I pushed for 1 hour and like 1 minute. She was born 10 minutes after her due date, which is very interesting. And I hear breech babies come early, but she came technically, whatever this means, right on time. I don't know what that means because the science is really not a perfect science. And she came out stunned, and we had asked for delayed cord clamping because, especially if she did come out stunned, we want her to get all that oxygenated blood. And what I didn't understand is because we were under infectious disease protocol, they cut the cord immediately and they took her away. They just took her. And I screamed, Jordan, go follow her. And they wouldn't let him in to be with her. So again, angels, everybody were angels. A nurse took his phone and videoed Willa, her breathing, her kicking. For anybody who knows, her first APGAR was 3 and her second was 9. So they take it one at 1 minute and the second at 5. So she was fine very quickly, but they kept her for me for about 20 minutes. They did all the testing. They wouldn't let Jordan in. They took his phone. They did do a video so I could see that she was moving and breathing. I had a second degree tear, which sucks, but it could have sucked a whole lot worse. So that, I feel that was not so bad. I had turned my epidural off being wheeled to the OR, but I'm glad there was some residual in there because stitches suck already, and stitches there is not, it's not okay. It's not okay. So I got stitched up. Like I said before, I don't have anything to compare it to, but it was a very hands-on experience. Every push, they really had their hands all over me. And once her body was born, so if you get squeamish, take a deep breath. Once her body was born, they corkscrewed her out of me. I didn't actually push her head out. They just took her out. And I did not love that. I didn't love that, but I will say it was relieving. And it also, like I said before, there was no, they didn't give my cervix any time to close down on her. And they didn't use forceps, they used their hands. And one thing I read a lot about is expect a lot of bruising. She had a bruise on her hip, but because she came out booty first, her vulva was really, 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 really swollen and purple. And we just learned that part of our body is not designed to take that much pressure. So, and it healed in like 2 weeks. She looked completely normal. So yeah, it is not supposed to. So they took her away. Everything ended up being fine. We got wheeled back and I got to meet her. She was only 20 minutes old. So unlike a lot of NICU moms who wait much, much longer, I do feel really lucky. And we got a delayed golden hour, and they put her right on my chest as soon as they could. They were talking at me. I didn't care what anything they said. And she did an immediate breast crawl, which was really cool. And she latched right away. And those are things I was very, very concerned about, her just being taken away. And the video we have of her, like she's under those OR lights. They made a makeshift NICU for her in a different OR that wasn't ours. So she, had to spend her first few minutes. And also, we weren't going to do the erythromycin medicine. I am super fortunate and I've never had an STD or anything like that. And that's usually why they do the medicine on their eyes. But because of COVID, we went ahead and did it because we just were like, I don't know, maybe they're evil particles in the air. We just don't know. So might as well do the thing. And it doesn't hurt them. It just was my preference. I just wanted one less medical thing to happen. It was just my one thing I was just trying to hold on to. It didn't actually matter that much. But yeah, so we got to the room, we got our golden hour. She was 18 inches and 7 pounds, 1 ounce. So she was a completely average baby. She's really skinny. Can you say hello? Are you ready to say hello to everybody? They're telling you, and this kitty cat say hello. So, more or less, that's how she got here. She said, I came in feet first. She came in booty first. Jordan he took a picture as soon as they corkscrewed her out of my body. There's a picture, and she looks like a Barbie doll that got their legs put on backwards. Her ankles were like by her head. So, which was bizarre. So if you want to see that picture, let me know. I will send it. I don't care. Yeah, remind me, like send me a message so I can remember. I won't send it to everybody because I know some people are like, oh yeah, please remind me. Some things that they worry about breech babies is hip dysplasia. And she actually had her ultrasound yesterday and it came back completely normal. So she has no hip dysplasia. They literally have no idea. You're so wiggly. They have no idea why she wouldn't turn. It just is. But so that's her successful breech story. Bye, Colette. It was so good to see you. Does anyone have any questions? And if you need to unmute yourself, you can.
What's an IUGR, baby?
IUGR is intrauterine growth restriction. So it's basically when they're super duper tiny. And ultrasound technology is garbage. It's useful for like seeing like body structures, right? But one thing that they do is they measure weight via ultrasound, but they're plus or minus 2 pounds wrong consistently. So the intrauterine growth is basically like a baby who just like isn't growing, and that could be lack of nutrients. That could be, and I'm really small and petite, so a lot of people just assumed that she was going to be super duper duper tiny. At one point that she was measuring bigger, and they were just like, it was super weird. They thought that she was going to be bigger, and I was like, no, this baby, she was born 7 pounds 1 ounce, but I got a ton of fluids because I had to get, when you're GBS positive, you have to get a lot of antibiotics, and they give you a bolus of fluid with every antibiotics every 4 hours. I've never had so many fluids in my life. So that because of that, she actually was born bigger. And by the time we left, I think, how big were you? Like she was just like under 6.5 pounds. That's most likely what her birth weight would have been. Most likely. We won't ever know that. But will you turn your head this way? No. No. So that's our best guess. You would see, this are your friends. But that's what intrauterine growth, and that's one of the severe IUGR is a reason to maybe do a C-section, because that baby isn't doing well for a myriad of reasons. And so and they could just not be developing, and they can get them out and help them develop with more. They can do that in NICU, but I don't know the science behind it very well. But yeah, they were super, super worried. But no, he was very normal. I mean, 7'1" is.
That's really average, yeah.
Super average.
Yeah.
And I've been told she's short. She was born 18 inches. But I was like, look at me. Like, this baby isn't going to be huge. Let's all be real. And then but now, and I think that's one thing that people are so scared of with breech babies, is they're so worried it's just going to mess them up earthside. And if I've learned nothing else, it's actually just like the complete and utter opposite. Like really and really truly. And I was worried, I was concerned about her hips. I'm really glad we did the ultrasound. She was 2 days old at her first chiropractic appointment. And I will say, when she was born, like I said, it looked like she was a doll with her ankles behind her head, which was super bizarre. But by the time they gave her to me, it wasn't like that anymore. They were pretty normal. The only thing we noticed is when we laid her down, her legs would go bloop,
just pop up.
They just popped up. And I think they worry about that even with C-section breech babies who aren't so compressed, because they just spend so much of their time with their hips in that position. So there's that concern in general. But we literally took her to the chiropractor they did an adjustment. We did 4 weeks of once a week an adjustment. And they gave us some stretches to do for her hip flexors. That was a big yawn. And her legs went straight on their own. And I have a feeling that all of that stuff was just to make us feel better. They probably would have done that on their own. It maybe would have taken a couple weeks longer. But I mean, I mess with her and stretch her all the time anyway. So I liked doing it, especially when they're that little. It was something to just do, which I like. But yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
I think it's really just amazing to hear your story, though. Like, wow. Like, I don't think you could write that story at all.
I told that to Jordan when our doctor called and was like, I've tested positive for COVID. I was like, come on. Like, I was like, I'm so glad like our doula is here. Like so many like little things. I was like, no one's going to believe any of this. I need witness. I need witnesses. Yeah, do you see your friends? You see them? Yeah? Yeah.
And you were still able to bring your doula into the operating room? They were like, no.
So we had her on, and the good news is we knew ahead of time. Like, we didn't get there and they were like, you can't have your doula. So that was good. So going into the OR, she was like, hey, Jess and Jordan, we were using Google Duo because she's got an Android. She was like, I'm going to record it. And we were like, cool. How cool. And we step into the OR and it crashed.
No.
Yeah, I was super bummed. But there's zero signal in there. Just none. Because he even just tried to so she could be there being more support. And she was equally as supportive for Jordan. I mean, he barely slept in 28 hours. I would say the best thing we packed was an entire reusable grocery bag of food, because he couldn't leave the room. He wasn't allowed to go anywhere. Once we got to the mother, they call them mother baby rooms, the postpartum rooms. Once we got there, he could go down and get like a sandwich, but he was drama. He really he didn't have any sustenance, and they tell you not to eat. And I had packed energy gels, which I'm very grateful for. So we packed a lot of food. I'm trying to think of everything, and yeah. But once we got into the OR, everything crashed. And our doula, I mean, she had been talking through everything with him. Once, I guess it was for the epidural, I guess they went out and had like a little team meeting about it, because I was not okay with it. I think that was probably one of the hardest things I did, because I really didn't want to do it. And he basically brought our doula with him everywhere. She was always on the phone. So it was good. I'm really bummed she wasn't there, though. She did get to meet Willa. When did she meet you? You were about a month old, I don't know. She was about a month old. But yeah, it sucks. And I don't know how the women in New York are doing it without anybody. And I mean, nurses are wonderful, and angels and all these wonderful things. And I mean, like I said, my last nurse, I still have a thank you card I'm writing to her, because she's just so, what?
No.
What? All that drama. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. And I've heard this multiple times, but you do get the nurses that you need. Sometimes not the ones you want. I can't say that for me. You don't get to choose anyway, but I'm just super, super grateful. I'm just very grateful. What? Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah. So you have this awesome team of people that you found, but how was the process of obtaining those people? Because I feel like that's a high stress type of worry that I would not want to deal with in the middle of pregnancy too. And it's like prepping for that concept.
Yeah, 100%. So one of my high school friends is a doula and a midwife assistant. So I reached out, and she lives in a different state. So I reached out and I was like, hey, and all of my mom friends live in California. So I reached out to her, and she gave me a few sites on how to search for doulas. And I knew I wanted one. And I can't recommend them enough. They're worth every penny. Why they aren't covered by insurance, I'll never understand, but we all have our own bones. Insurance is the worst. So we did research, and we had a few phone meetings with people. So we talked to a few people, and then we had coffee with kind of the people we felt gelled with, and we ended up going with a team of 3. And the reason being is, for example, like mine, it was 28 hours. Our doula needed a nap, even though she was virtual. So she took a nap, and then somebody else took over. So in a normal hospital situation, they would have relieved one another over time. So we did that. We wanted younger people, and I'm really grateful because it was not a thing at all to transfer to everything virtually. They didn't even think about it. They were just like, oh, okay, well, we'll use Google Duo. We'll do this. Like, they had it figured out. Like, how to connect with me how do we connect as humans was the hard part, not the technical aspect. But there's that aspect. And then they cost, ours cost $1,300. And that included, and I found them way early on.
That's not bad, actually.
No, and some are much cheaper than that, but these folks were $1,300. I really struggle with some perinatal depression as well, and for someone who I am an anomaly, and I don't have depression and anxiety in my normal life. So really dealing with that and being pregnant and working the biggest show of my career, I was struggling. Mary and Sarah know that for sure. I had a really hard time, and
Sarah's face.
Yeah, it was awful. You just don't know why you feel bad. And I really had to keep things a big time secret for work.
Yeah.
And so you're struggling and going to my honey wagon to cry and pull my shit together and be a boss bitch 5 minutes later was just, it was a neurological journey I wasn't ready for. And my doulas were amazing. And we had a relationship early on. Whenever we learned that Willa was breech, not turning, I needed a doctor. I had some other doctor drama because in our system as it is, if you're healthy, your appointments are 5 minutes. They don't talk to you.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Which is also terrible because it's like cold and uncaring in a scenario where you're emotional and need that support.
Yeah. And for me, like, I'm not a religious person, but this was a very spiritual event for me. And to be just void of all of that, I was like, this sucks. And they were birth professionals who are my now friends. We've had discussions where we're just like, or text where it's like, hey, this is just as your friend, not as your doula. So we had a lot of things like that, and they would have coffee with me. They would talk through options. They were really supportive and helped me find the information I needed for breech birth. Hi, Cricklet. Like all those things, like they were my advocates from way early on. And then technically included in it was one postpartum visit. We didn't get that. And the other reason we chose our team was they're also phenomenal photographers. Sometimes they would take pictures with their cell phones that were better than anything I could do with a camera. And we actually paid for, it was just $500 extra, but it was for a fresh 48. So like having a whole, like as soon as she's there, just taking all those like really sweet pictures, and we got hi Kirk. Hi, Kirk.
They all like to make their anus show.
Yeah.
He does it every time I'm on Zoom.
Like, look at my asshole.
Yeah.
Oh,
Every single time.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
Now he's mad at me now.
Yeah. Don't you
He's
tell
like,
me
I'm
what
gonna
it is.
hide it now. It's tucked away.
Oh.
So
He's
we
like,
did all
"Do
that,
not pay
and our
attention
doula came to our house for a month later for newborn photos, which technically they're in their newborn stage until 3 months. So, but yeah, that's how we chose our doulas, and I recommend like really early on, and get a really good relationship with them. And that's something we all, in like our post-mortem together, we were just like, man, we're so grateful we had a relationship before all of this, because it just made it easier to transition. It wasn't like, I need doulas today, and they were like, hi, we don't know you. No, they knew our family. They knew how different Jordan was. They kind of had an idea of how he communicated. So that was good. So, and it's worth the money when we were budgeting things. And she was kind of a surprise. We were like, yeah, if it happens, great. A month later. It just happened really quickly. So it's not like we had time to budget anything. But it was definitely when we were looking at, upcoming expenses, it was like, oh, we'd rather do the doulas, and then the photos. And we still got like a family photo shoot at our house. She came and was masked up, and we at that time, we had all been quarantining for a month, and cases with good quarantiners weren't going up. So she came and held her, but she kept a mask on the whole time and washed her hands like 20 times. So, but yeah, that's how we went about it. And I'm sure, I wish I could remember the site off the top of my head, but if anybody ever needed it, it was like a directory of doulas, and they had their website, and I kind of, I'm hipster enough that I was like, I need some like-minded souls.
Mm-hmm.
I need some people who are going to probably say fuck sometimes. Like I know who I need.
Yeah.
Also talked to this older lady from France who was a midwife in France, and she offered a lot of like body work included, and it was like she was $700. And so but we just decided to go with people just a little bit closer to our experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked out for us in the long run. But everybody, like, I kind of thought I want someone like my mom, that wasn't my mom.
Mm-hmm. That wasn't my mom.
Yeah. Makes sense.
My mom, but not.
Makes me feel like she's a mom to someone.
Yeah. It turned out I actually just wanted a friend who knew more than me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that advocacy is so important too. I was actually talking to Eric about that last night, and if you end up in that scenario where you have to be the one defending me, what are you going to say? How are you going to handle it? Because this is important. And I think a lot of partners don't realize just how bad the system is, and the push to do it their way and make it easier for them, essentially.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it continues into postpartum.
Yeah. That's lovely.
It does. I mean, that's something I also did. We hired a postpartum midwife.
Yeah.
Best thing I've ever done. It looked like I was going to be back to work within 2 to 3 weeks of having her, because SAG doesn't have any maternity leave. I couldn't save up enough money.
Oh, I came back.
You were in a whole different room.
My internet's just been like going, so you guys have had some really interesting screen grabs for the better part of the past 5 minutes. So I was like, let me go out in the living room. Maybe I will not have as many glitches. I could have taken some choice screen caps, y'all.
That's funny. Woo!
Would have been great.
Fun.
But yeah, we went with the postpartum midwife. I check it out for anybody. They're so cool. It's called Pebble Parents. It's pebbleparents.com, but the program's called Pebble. And it's that you have meetings with people, and they get to know you, and you have a meeting with your postpartum midwife. They get to know your goals. I text her all the time still. And it was $1,000 for an 18-week program.
No way.
Yep. And it was so cool because like, it felt like once my doula's job was done, my postpartum midwife was on my phone. And she was the one being like, have you seen the lactation consultant? Even if it was going well there, like, I ended up, Willa had a lip tie, so her upper lip was completely connected. And I ended up getting mastitis, which we weren't sure if it was mastitis or COVID. So she's the one I was like, hey, my temperature's like 102. What do I do? And what doctor do I call? I've had like so many doctors. I don't know who's my doctor. And she's the one who like got me help that I was no longer miserable within 24 hours, and got me lactation consultants, has gotten me to pelvic floor PT. And Pebble pays for one pelvic floor PT visit. They pay for, they do a 3-week postpartum depression screening with a licensed counselor. And that's all just part of the program. And honestly, my perinatal depression almost vanished upon hiring them. And it was because I knew it felt so good to know I was taken care of. And I knew I'm in the final stretch. So I was in this 3rd trimester hell of trying to figure out what was going to happen. And knowing that like my future me was going to be set up for success. I mean, I just felt better. It was like overnight. I was like, oh, I feel better. So yeah. Love you, Sarah.
Good to see you.
Her internet is crap. So
yeah.
Poop.
It's okay. I'll talk to you later. So that's the other thing that I think too. I deep down knew that I would need a lot of help if I ended up needing a C-section. I knew that would be really hard for me. So I'm very grateful. That was one of my serenity things, being like, well, if that happens, I know mentally I'm going to be a train wreck. And I had a lifeline. So that was another choice that I'm so glad we made. And I would not have known about, one thing about having a baby now is the internet is actually full of good. And the resources and information was so easy to find. Like I could literally use Instagram as Google and find anything I needed to find.
Okay.
I, on Instagram, saw images. I didn't get to see full video, but images of 2 successful vaginal breech births. And finding 2 in a place where there are none, it was really encouraging. And to see it like what it looks like and being like, oh, okay. So it just gave me something to visualize, and which visualization is super powerful. So I will say that is a resource that I have said multiple times to people is, I would have thought it would have been so awesome, but like being able to be open and talk to other professionals. And even when I was trying to turn her, I reached out. There's a technique called moxibustion, and it's basically moxa. And it's apparently this very, very stinky mixture of weeds that you burn near your pinky toe. And it actually has a really high success rate of turning babies.
That's hilarious.
What?
But I couldn't find any moxa. I just couldn't find any. But I was like sending messages to midwives on Instagram because I couldn't find their information. So I was just sending messages being like, do you happen to have this?
Can I buy this thing from you?
Yeah, black market some moxa.
Can you help me? And a few of them were like, oh no, but you can call here. And because, finding a good herbalist is not that easy. Either. And I've been in Atlanta now for 5 years, but I haven't lived here full time for about 2.5. And I've only worked here. Like all of my friends are in the movie business. So it's not like I just knew people in my life that I could get more of this information. And most of us are LA transplants. So we're all like,
yeah.
I don't know. So that was one of the struggles. She's just hanging out.
Oh, so cute.
She's very busy all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm happy to answer them. And you can also message me. And I'm going to post this whole thing on YouTube. So that way it's one of my goals is to be as open and honest about this, is because I really also want more doctors to be trained in this. And that's something that is not happening. A lot of modern doctors are just not being trained in this. And when they asked if, before we knew that nobody could be present, I was like, any student in the vicinity is welcome, because I want them to get it done.
But there's only 3 in your area that are trained to.
Yeah, and I think
that.
And crazy enough, in Southern California, it's about the same.
I believe it. I was originally studying towards pre-med for OBGYN, and when I job shadowed during my 4th year of college, my mom is a lactation consultant and RN, so she was working at an OBGYN. She got me into job shadow some of the doctors there for like a couple of weeks. And the complaint I heard across the board, because they will all have their own practice as a private medical group together, they weren't hospital OBGs.
Right.
They were like, insurance ruins everything. Basically, they're like, I have to see my patients like cattle in order to afford the malpractice. It puts me in a position where I'm always having to make these decisions for the risk when it's not, what the mother wants or is even all that important in the long run, like so it turned me away from it completely, which is
really hard.
Sad. And yeah, it's such a messed up industry as it is.
Hi, Miranda.
Hey.
I'm trying to, since she's like, hi, Tucker. What Zoom can't see is baby Tucker.
Aww.
He's hanging out.
Oh, she's smiling. And drooling.
What about this stuff? Hi, Tucker. Tucker is how old now, Miranda? How old is Tucker now?
4 months.
He's grown up.
Aww.
He's a grown up.
See my cute shirt?
That's cute. His shirt says the breast milk, the original fast food.
Love it. Love it.
Facts. In the hour and 15 minutes we've all been hanging out, I have fed this baby 3 times.
How are your nipples?
She's that, and she's in the late afternoon, like it's 3:15 here. She struggles in the afternoon, so it tends to be just kind of like comfort, and she doesn't want to sleep. And she's currently in the afternoon, she'll do like 15-minute cat naps. She's just kind of like, I don't know what to do with my life.
My younger sister, her child is 1.5 years now, but that baby cluster fed like crazy. She didn't sleep ever. She was just constantly getting 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, like for the first 5 months.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky as in this early phase. It could change tonight, but she sleeps really well. She sleeps from like 10:30, 11 at night till about 4 in the morning.
That's lucky, yeah.
Solid, yeah.
But she doesn't nap very well. She's like, I take 30-minute nap. No matter what you do.
She has FOMO.
Yeah.
She's the social bee already.
And I've tried to be like, go into the room with her and turn everything off, and she stares at you. Do this. She started to take a nap in the mornings, but there's all these people here. You see how your friend? It's hanging out. She actually met her first baby this past week.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They stared at each other. They were like, whoa. Really good friends of ours. Chris Bradley.
Yeah, I saw that.
His baby was born in January,
Oh.
and so they had extra little baby diapers. So they called me. They're like, "Hey, do you want these?" I was like, "I sure
Yes.
do." And I was like, "Well, I'll come down to y'all." And so we masked up and let the girls meet each other.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was really sweet. But they did. They both like just stared at each other because they've been quarantine babies. They've not.
Yeah. You have a special connection, all of you.
Yeah, they've not been out. So they were. Yeah. It was funny, especially his little girl's name's Ella, and she had like, she's older. Willa just kind of was like, new people, hello. Like, she doesn't, I don't know. But Ella was just like, what is that? It was so funny.
Aww. How are they doing?
They're doing great.
Good.
And I mean, that's been the nice thing about not being home is you just, I didn't think I was going to get any sort of maternity leave. And I'm just ever grateful that I didn't have to balance production schedule and this. And I wasn't going to be doing stunts right away. The intimacy work was kind of what was going to take over. But depending on the production, it's really, really busy.
Yeah.
Or nothing. So I got really lucky.
Yeah.
But any other questions, my friends?
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Hey, Miranda, you stay on, and I'm gonna stop the recording.